Y a pas de son. No sound.
You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible. Where we go from there, it's a choice I leave to you.
Bonjour tout le monde. My name is Stephan Janssen. I'll be speaking in English, if you don't mind. For the people who don't know me, I'm the founder of Devoxx, so I'm more or less guilty of these things happening. But it's, of course, a great team, and I delegate a lot. And by delegating, I can still do a lot of programming. I basically program every day. I basically love what I'm doing, and it's just exciting times. I think we're at a stage, I call this, we are at a stage at a quantum superposition state, where it's both exciting and frightening at the same time. I truly believe that that's where we are, and we have no idea where it's going to go. What I want to talk about is agentic systems, and let's just jump immediately in the demo that I want to show. So normally I put my sunglasses on, but I forgot them, so sorry for that. But I'll show you what I've been doing for the last 3 to 4 months. I'm basically not programming anymore by saying, like, I'm not typing code anymore. I'm prompting and generating code. And this was not possible 4 months ago. So this is only like the last couple of months that you can do that. And it's frightening, but it's also eye-opening. And I'm like so much more productive these days by doing this. But it's also because I'm a senior developer. As you can see from the gray hair, I mean, I do have a bit of knowledge, I do have some experience, and just by combining those two, I'm just more productive. And just let me show you how I work every morning. I go to Claude, which is from Anthropic, and the beauty of Claude is that they have a subscription fee of $20. For $20, I don't know if you have done the math, but for $20, you can use 1.6 million tokens every 4 to 5 hours. They're changing and throttling this a bit, but that's the reference. If you would use, so 1.6 million tokens every 4 hours, if you use every 4 hours the whole month, that would be $1,300 of tokens that you would normally pay if you use the API key. So I'm a bit cheap on that level. I start with a subscription, and when I run out of tokens, I then switch to the API key, basically, right? So that's how I work these days. So you can do crazy stuff. 4 months ago, I think it was November 24 or around that time, they announced, Anthropic announced MCP, which I'll talk about. And so you can see here, I've actually built my own MCP file system tools, but I also added the JetBrains MCP tool. So I've got like 45 tools, or 43, and I can go, for example, to GitLab, and I have an issue here on the CFP. So what I can do is that I can say, you have full access to my project and let's go to the project of CFP. The CFP is about 2.4 million lines of code, 2.4 million lines of code. So I can go here, say, okay, that's the directory. So I can copy the directory here. And then I can copy the issue and basically start a prompt. And what it's going to do is going to look at the tools it has available and start asking me, hey, can I use this tool? So this is a tool from JetBrains, where it will list the directory tree, okay? I've also provided my own tools, where it can go to GitHub, it can go to the bash, to the shell script, and so on. And so I'm just pressing OK, 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 and then I walk the dog, which means I go outside with the dog, right? I come back 15 minutes later, and it will have done, I call this file system RAG. So RAG is retrieval augmented generation, but it's using the file system to discover my project. And as you can see, it's like really going through the project, you can see what it's doing, and basically exploring, based on the issue I gave, where to find in the 2.4 million lines of code where the potential issue is, and even how to fix it. It can go that far that it will say, okay, I've just fixed the bug for you. I get goosebumps just saying this. I mean, serious, I mean, that's enough for an identity crisis, right? But on the other hand, I can walk the dog. I can be productive and really fix issues, add features, and so on. And this is like my perfect assistant. I could fall in love with this assistant because it makes my life so much more different. And so, of course, it goes on, and believe me, it will fix the bug, right? But it will take a few while before, like here, it's now using my file system, and it's going to execute bash. So it's going to do a command, most likely run Maven, etc. I'll stop it here, but it will just do things magically, right? And so I want to know, how can I build this myself? How can we build this ourselves? Because this is like, that's great, it's Anthropic, but I want to use Gemini 2.5, I want to use ChatGPT 4.1. I mean, it's like a boy who wants to open the car and see what's inside and build it yourself. And that's basically what I want to talk about today, is that how can we build this stuff ourselves? Executive summary, you can build it yourself in a couple of hours. Wow, couple of hours. Now, that's also like great and not great, because if you want to build a business around it, how can you make a business around something like that, a code assistant, if you can build, if anybody can build this in 2 hours? So we need to be more creative and add more features on top of that if you want to build a business out of it. So that's basically what I showed you, 2.5 million lines of code, and it basically fixed the bug. So it's funny enough, I mean, I already had the theme on the matrix. This morning at the keynote, they were also referring to the matrix. It's a nice fit. Even Mario, you also used the same slide or the picture. So the matrix is like a very good fit because they have these agents, right? And so what are the building blocks to make this application, or this type of application? So it's going so fast. I mean, I'm trying to stay up to date on a daily basis. And that sometimes has an impact on even the sleep I have. Like last night, OpenAI released Cortex, CLI. So it's basically a code. It's open source, and it actually runs on terminal, and it allows you to do the same thing which I've just showed in the desktop, where it basically does, again, file system RAG. So it uses like fgrep or ripgrep. So it's basically doing find on your file system to find semantic similarities and search based on keywords. But 1 year ago, or 5 months ago, we were basically talking as an application, we talk up to the LLM, and that's it. We have a system instruction, we have a user prompt, we might add some context to do in-prompt learning, right? So you might include some documentation which has not yet been indexed by the LLM, so you add it in the context, and then you have the memory for the chatting, so it remembers your previous questions. What's happening since then is that, again, 1 year ago, we had tools. So tools is a way where you basically say, hey, I've got these different methods in my application, and this is the syntax of the methods. I call the LLM, and I say, and that's like the hello world is like get weather. What's the weather in Paris? And by the way, I have a method which says, get weather information, and it needs the city and the country, and that's it. And so it will return and actually call your tool within the application and then answer it through the LLM. And this is the key point. The tools, this approach of like providing method information, and the LLM now knows, okay, I can call this method. That's the mechanism which opens Pandora's box. That is really the key one. And the good thing is, I mean, I'm very Java-centric. I love to program in Java. We basically have 2 options in Java these days, 2 frameworks. We have LangChain4j, and we have Spring AI. And if you look at how you want to develop that using tool, I don't know if you can read it. It's a bit small, but they're basically copying and pasting each other. It's very, very similar, right? I mean, it's a builder pattern that they use. It's functional or fluid, and so on. These two examples work, and they almost look the same, right? So that's good. You don't have to just do Python. You can do this in Java, right? And so this is how it works. I was just explaining that. I think I copied this from Google somewhere, where they explain that very nice. You basically, on the left, you have the application. You send a prompt. You pass the function definition. It's like a schema of your functions, the methods that you have available. Then the LLM will decide, can I answer the question? Like if you say, how do I develop a hello world? It will just immediately answer how to develop a hello world. But if you say, what's the weather in Paris tomorrow? It does not have that information. But if you've passed the function saying, hey, get weather, it will then actually return and say, okay, to answer this question, you need to call the get weather application. And that's where we have the parse, response, and execute function on the left. This is the application then calling, like using reflection or whatever, calling that method in your application to get the response. Then that response is again given to the LLM. And then the LLM can answer, tomorrow the weather in Paris is blah, blah, blah. Right? That's the flow. That's really important that you understand that, right? Now, the crazy thing is that you can add a lot of functions, you can add a lot of tools, etc., and that's where it gets exciting. Because the problem is, I can start adding lots of tools, lots of agents, and then all of a sudden, strange things might happen as well. So for example, I was starting to build this desktop clone, so to speak, and I was basically providing all the different tools that I want to actually get the job done. So what do I have? I mean, I didn't even know that like glop is a very interesting command line tool. But also ripgrep, I've never heard about that. There's a very performant way of actually doing introspection of your file system. But basically, all these tools that you have here is enough to fully automate and introspect your project. And not only that, I've even included some Git tools, which would allow you to actually even create the project on GitHub, push it to GitHub, etc. And that's where the excitement is, or also again, the dual experience is that we can actually build all these different agents, and we can delegate a lot of our tasks that we do manually to these agents. And what you're seeing is that there's marketplaces starting to pop up with all these agents, and a lot of them in open source. I mean, I've personally, I had a Python version for file system. I gave the Python code to Claude and just said, hey, rewrite it in Java. And it produces the Java code for me. I don't have to do it myself. I can again walk the dog and have a better life and be very productive. And so in LangChain4j, it's very, very simple. You have your list of tools, and I just pass the Genie tools, which is basically a collection of tools, to the tools method, and you can actually start using it. Now, this approach, this was 4 months old. So that was, this is so 2024 approach. We do it differently these days. By the way, in your basically system prompt, the system message, it's a good practice to include, for example, the tool instructions. So actually in the system prompt, you say what tools are available, so it knows in the context immediately, okay, I have access to the fgrep or the ripgrep, etc. So that's definitely, you see that as a pattern, basically, how people are implementing it. And so I built this tool application. Wow, yeah, I've got all the tools, they all work, etc. And then I executed, and what happened is that it was calling all these tools, chuck, 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 and then there's boom, exception. 40,000 input tokens limitation per minute on Anthropic. So I can only send 40,000 tokens per minute. And I investigated, and yep, it's there. I mean, I'm using Claude 3.7, and that's the limitation. There's actually a reason why these applications are returning a streaming response, because it takes more time to stream it, and that way you're not overloading their systems, and they're basically moving the load and spreading the load a bit. But if you're not streaming it, and you're just calling all these different methods, they're just being overloaded. So what I'm running into on a daily basis is that I get like overloaded exceptions. So I have to then switch to Sonnet on Amazon, Bedrock, or I then switch to Google Gemini. And so what is really interesting is that you need to have a tool where you can actually switch between different models, because certain models are down. I mean, sometimes OpenAI is really overloaded, it doesn't work. But that means, hey, I'm working now, I want to be productive, give me an alternative, right? So you need to have tools which allows you to switch between them. So I was saying tools is like 2024. So what's in 2025? Well, I already mentioned it a bit. It's MCP. I mean, I think there's going to be an interesting talk by Guillaume as well tomorrow on MCP. Make sure you go to that one. But basically, MCP is the Model Context Protocol. It has been coined, or it has been announced by Anthropic in November last year. And the good thing is that both OpenAI and last week also Google have endorsed MCP. So this is by de facto becoming the standard. So if you remember well, you have to remember a few things, but remember MCP because you will most likely use this or just develop your own MCP tools. And it's a very straightforward way of it's not really complicated. I mean, except, so what you do, instead of passing tools, you now provide tool providers, right? And you can actually do both. I was mentioned in beta 3 of LangChain 4j, you can actually have tools locally and also have MCP tools combined. So you can combine them, but honestly, the tools themselves will disappear, so you don't have to take ownership, and you will just use tool providers. And these tool providers can be developed by somebody else in a different language, etc. But that also opens up a Pandora's box for sure, because there are definitely some issues with that. The cool thing is that if you look here, it actually has two different protocols. It has a standard I/O, which means that the MCP server, the implementation, is running locally on your machine. Or you can have an MCP remotely, and then it uses HTTP server-side events remotely. Right? And that's where the excitement is, because that's like if you're a business or an opportunist of opportunities, that's where there's a lot of business to be made, because you could all of a sudden offer external MCP services which go to some legacy system or whatever, or a website you have, and you can wrap and provide an MCP, like WhatsApp has already provided MCP, etc. The only problem is that the S in MCP stands for security. I don't see an S in model context. Okay. So there's definitely some issue. You have to watch out for that. So this is like my marketing slide, because what I've done is that I was so frustrated with the coding assistants that were available in IntelliJ 2 years ago. They didn't support local models. They didn't support switching between different models. So I decided to develop my own plugin. It's free, it's open source, and it's 100% developed in Java. And since this morning, we have 17,000 downloads already, so that's not too bad. It's a hobby project. I'm not commercializing it, but I'm using my own dog food. This is where I can put my excitement in, because if 4.1 is out or Gemini 2.5 is out, I can immediately add it and use it. I don't have to wait for GitHub or Copilot or AI Assistant to support it. So my aim is to have a solution where I can do the same what Claude's desktop is doing. That's really my goal, right? So let me show that. So if I go into IntelliJ, you just go to the marketplace, you type in Devoxx, and you will find the Devoxx Genie plugin. You just install it, and then you have that small icon, and it's basically available in any IDE of JetBrains. So I use PyCharm a lot, because there's still a lot of innovation happening in Python. That plugin is there as well, of course, right? And so the cool thing is that I've added immediately MCP support, which I think I was one of the first, to be honest, because I was like, when MCP came out, the next week I developed it, right? And so what you can do is you can actually go into, so in the settings of Devoxx Genie MCP settings, you can basically define the command, which is it's Java, and I've actually developed the file system MCP using Spring AI. the tool itself is using LangChain4j, but I also wanted to play with Spring AI, so at least I understand both of them. Excuse me. And you can actually add even environment variables, because I have a GitHub version as well, a GitHub MCP, so you need to provide the private token to access your GitHub account. And so this is where you basically configure it. And then if you activate it here, enable, what I saw is that when I enabled it, things were happening, but I couldn't see what was happening. So I wanted to debug the calls which were going backwards and forwards. So I actually had to hack LangChain4j a bit, because they don't really actually provide an external logger. So I had to hack the logging and concatenate it using some notation so I could actually capture it. So if I do that now, I can say like, let's go and create a new project first from scratch. Demo FR. Okay. And here I can choose like, okay, let's go for Bedrock, because I know they will run, and use 3.7, like that. And I can see the MCP is active, so if I click on it, I can see on the right, the different tools I have available within MCP, right? So now I can say, create a Spring Boot, let's do Hello World, of course, right? Hello World, REST endpoint, using a Maven build. Like that. And so now, if the cloud connection works, etc., and I need to enable MCP logging, it goes to Anthropic, it comes back, and I can actually see here already what it's doing. So I can actually follow what's going on, but not only that, I can click on it and actually see what it is getting back from NCP and what it's doing, etc. So I can actually see the conversations happening, not only with the LLM, but also what tools it's calling, etc., just by clicking on it and see the JSON things appear. And so it's creating a directory, as you can see, success. So you can already see it here. Look, if I refresh it, reload from disk, voila. It has created the application. It's still working. I need to add the POM. The POM is there. It's going to update the POM, etc. Look, it has just added these things. But you see just the control being added as well. Bloody hell. Just works. I get goosebumps again. It's like, again, exciting and frightening at the same time. It's like, bloody hell. So, I mean, how will our profession look like in 3 years' time? I think personally, think positive. We're just going to be much more productive. I can do proof of concepts in a couple of hours with a full with a full React front end, beautiful CSS, which I could never develop myself, and I just generate that. I don't have to learn CSS anymore. I can delegate that, seriously. I mean, come on. Yeah, well, yeah, why not? I mean, but we can do POCs, you can be creative and just do it in really very short period of time. Cool. So that's open source, fully free, install it, play with it. I accept pull requests, right? So, and play with it. There's no, you have to. Okay. That was my backup thing. So there are some issues with MCP. Authentication, there's no authentication yet, but they are working on a new specification of MCP where security will be addressed. I think we are now at the second version of MCP already. So, and the beauty is that it's not just Anthropic, it's Google, it's Red Hat, it's lots of companies, OpenAI, they're all involved, so that's great. But be very careful with MCPs. You can really have malicious code executed. Like, I could have a prompt where I say, remove my bin directory, and it will just execute that. Right? Luckily, let me just show you, in the bash file, on file system, with this one here, I've actually added some limitation, like whitelisting commands, where it says like here, okay, rm dir, move, del, and so on, don't execute that, right? Because what I've done is that there are some file system MCPs where you have to pass the directory of the project and it will only work in that project. But that doesn't work for me because I want to have multiple projects where I say, hey, look at that project, like look at LangChain4j, now look at Spring AI and tell me how I had to do it, and it goes to those 2 different projects. I mean, I'm like a super user, right? So I want to have full flexibility. But just in case it might want to remove something because it thinks like, this wasn't nicely developed, at least I'm adding that verification there, right? So you have to be very, very careful, is that it can produce or execute malicious code. That's why you can see here, I took a screenshot. Because of the fact that I added this whitelist commands or blacklist commands, it actually does say, okay, I see that we can't use RM on directly. But that's the great, it says directly. It might do it indirectly by just overwriting the file. Seriously, that's scary stuff. So be very, very careful. Do not expose this like for your enterprise. We have MCP, and then you have things where WhatsApp is being hacked and things like that. So we're very, it's like the cowboy and Indian situation we're in now for the moment. So be very careful. There's also no differentiation between low or high risk tools. There's nothing there. It doesn't know that. It's just a tool to get the job done for the LLM. So it might accidentally actually expose your .inf file, right? Be careful with that. So again, there's lots of warnings there that you have to watch out for. What I've also noticed, I added like all the tools I was using, I had like 110 tools. Well, if you have 110 tools, that means it needs to include all the syntaxes of all these methods in that one tool. In that one call, sorry. So that means it will use more tokens, it will take more time to process. And so I was actually also with Mario chatting about that, I think, last week, and one of the Red Hat guys said, like, you should turn off some tooling and just focus on the ones you want. So don't just enable all of them, because it might become a nightmare, and it might also have a higher cost on data transfer. And the model will not just know which one to choose, right? There are some mismatches. So I have to be like, you have to be explicit to activate the tool. So like when I was saying, hey, use this project directory here, sometimes depending on which tool, which LLM I'm using, I have to explicitly say, and by the way, use the file system tools, right? Because sometimes it might actually not understand what you're asking, and it might not actually call the right tools. So the prompt has to be, you have to be sometimes very explicit. Keep in mind, like with Devoxx Genie, I can switch between a local model and a cloud model in the same conversation. There are local models like Llama 3.1 who supports also tools, but the Llama 3.1 is much smaller and less intelligent. So if you're working with a less intelligent LLM, you need to be more explicit about it as well. Okay? So this was my goal. I wanted to develop this coding assistant. I've already got something working, a hello world, right? But it's not yet smart enough, to be honest, to do like the full-blown desktop approach what Claude is doing. I'm still missing some important points. I mean, it's already creating code automatically, which is nice, right? But it doesn't do planning, for example. So I need a planner. I need an orchestrator. So I need something more than MCP, right? And this is like my goal, how I want to develop this. The patterns are clear. This is also coming from Anthropic, but Google is copying this. There's other Python frameworks copying this. These are the patterns which you are seeing more and more. It's basically an agent loop, so it's looping constantly, and then it's delegating and orchestrating the results from the different LLMs. But it's basically a loop. It's like a game where you have also refreshing the frames and basically delegate it based on what comes out of it. You can find more details there on anthropic.com. But also Spring, the Spring AI team, they've actually developed some examples in Java following these different patterns. So if you want to study that, there's this link on the bottom as well. The reality is, innovation is happening in Python. That's very clear. Luckily, a few months later, the Java ecosystem also picks it up. So that's good. So there are Java solutions. I mean, I was playing with, for example, small agents, which is from Hugging Face, really very interesting things because they're like doing also code execution. Then I saw that also, of course, Google does the same thing. And then last week at Google Cloud Next, we had the announcement of the Agent Development Kit, the ADK. So that was last week. I had a rainy weekend in Belgium, so I had to play with it, right? So I went like, hup, head in first, played with it, and this is basically how it looks. So this is what I've shown you up to now. We have MCP talking to tools using HTTP SSE or STO, and it basically uses a JSON RPC approach. What Google has announced is that they have something on top of that called the Agent Development Kit. So it's basically a development kit to orchestrate different agents. What is not fully clear, because ADK says that they support MCP, but it's not fully clear because ADK also supports tools, is that where is the overlap? That's not clear for me just yet. I think there's an overlap with MCP and ADK, and time will. I need to do more investigation on that. But it's very promising. They immediately, Google announced, we will support MCP, so that's good, right? What they also announced, and I did not have time to go into that, is also A2A, agent-to-agent communication. So agent-to-agent communication is basically a collaboration between the different agents, and this is also based on the same standards or communication transport standards of MCP. So it is also using STO, it's also using server-side events, and it's also using JSON RPC. It is clear, take a picture of this, because this is, for me, the future. This is 2025. This is what you need to do. If you want to do agent development, in my opinion, based on already the prototypes I've built, and I'll show you them later on, this is it. If you want to do agentic workflow, I mean, Google's behind it, Anthropic, OpenAI, Red Hat, IBM is endorsing it. It's clear that this is where it goes. So if you look at ADK, it actually goes much further than MCP. It has agents, it has tools, it has orchestration, callbacks. This is a copy from the Google documentation, ADK docs. It's clear they've really thought about this. And the good thing is, there's going to be a Java version coming out from this as well. The current version is Python, and they publicly announced, and again, go to Guillaume's talk tomorrow, because I hope he will go even in more detail. You still have this evening, eh, Guillaume, too? But we will have a Java version as well. So that's, for me, it's like, okay, it's clear that's where it's going. How does it look? It's, again, a new abstraction layer on top of another layer, right? It's like this morning in the keynote with OZI, or, the different layers. Well, this is how you build the first root agent. You give it a model. The examples for Google is, of course, using Gemini, but you're not limited to Google models. That's good. You give it a name, you give it a description. The instruction is linked to a text file, which is very, very long, explaining what the responsibilities are of that agent. And then you give it sub-agents. So this is where you have the agent-to-agent communication. It will decide, based on your question, if it will go to that agent or not. And then each agent itself has tools. So if you see there on the right, we now have the planner agent. The planner agent has a huge prompt as well, explaining what the planning needs to do, but it now has access to the tools. And I assume there you could have MCP tools as well. That's, for me, not yet clear, but most likely that's how it goes. And then the beauty is that because we see that it's a polyglot large language model environment, we're not using one model from one provider. I talked to Claude in Devoxx Genie. I talked to Claude. The response, I let it review by Gemini 2.5, and then that response, I let it review by ChatGPT 4.1. So I have 3 different models reviewing each other's answers in the same conversation, and the result is... Seriously. And then you, as a senior developer, can actually evaluate, okay, does it make sense or not, right? But I had already 3 assistants helping me, which are much smarter than me, by the way, right? Helping me how to go in a certain direction. So if you want to then use another model, they've used Light LLM. And Light LLM is basically a wrapper to allow you to use other models. Cool. And we'll have this in Java as well. So most likely within the next 2 months. So looking forward to that. So let's demo this. So let me show you. Where did I put it? I should have opened that in advance. Oh. Oh no, of course, it's in Python. Damn. There it is. So this is your root agent I showed you. If you go to the prompt, this is the explanation of what that root agent will do. Your capabilities, how to use your specialized sub-agent, important instructions, the tooling it has available, that could be improved because I added more, but also the path to the project, etc. So that's a very important part of making this work, right? And then if I go into how I started, is that you just do ADK web. You see it on the bottom there, ADK web. And this will start actually a local server going to that Python information, going to the Python project, and now I can access it using this browser. So I now have a view on the ADK, on the agent I've developed. I have Coding Assistant now, right? And you can see what's going on here by, okay, it's calling that. And because it has GitHub access, etc., I can now say, create me a public repo call, let's be specific, GitHub repo named Devoxx FR25. Oh no, let's do it differently. How do I develop a Spring Boot REST Hello World using Maven build? Let's do that first. And so what it's doing, you can actually follow where it's going and using which agents and how it delegates it, right? Okay, so it says, okay, I'll help you create a simple Spring Boot. It's creating a project. I can look at it. It's hallucinating because it doesn't know how to create a project. It creates a file. And I can actually go through the conversation and see what it's doing. And it's going backwards and forwards. It's okay. I'm not sure if it's still running. But it basically is like this debug information of how the agents are communicating with each other. And I think it's actually stopped. So let me see. First, let's create a project directory. I'll create structure, blah, blah, with the current, okay. Let's see. Can you create a public GitHub repo named Devoxx France 2005 to host this project? And let's go to my GitHub repo, blah, 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 here. I'll refresh. So there's no Devoxx here. All right. So let's see if it's going to do that for me. Okay. It's transferring the agent to create the GitHub repo. Okay, I've created the GitHub repo. I encountered an error. It seems I forgot to initialize the repo. And it will just go on. But let me go to the repo, see if it's there. Refresh. Yep. I've mistyped it. But it has created the repo. It created a POM. And it's basically now adding the create REST implementation while communicating. And you can see the debugging going on here to understand what it's doing. I can remove that one. You're speechless, right? Everybody's like, what the fuck is going on? This was not possible 1 week ago. 1 week ago, this was not possible. And this is using this orchestration between the different agents. Using Java, eventually, now Python. It has access to my tools with GitHub, so it can access GitHub, but I can do all sorts of things. Julien is doing a talk tomorrow afternoon where he actually did the same, not using ADK, but MCP, and he gave access to Azure CLI, and because the tool always says, I know Kung Fu. Oh no, that's the matrix. I know how to access Azure CLI, and it basically does all the CLI things for you. This stuff, I deploy that to Google Cloud Run. So it now runs on Google Cloud Run. And I have written like a 6-year GUI on top of that here. Look how beautiful it is. Oh, look, I can like make this smaller, remove it. I didn't do anything there. It was all generated for me using beautiful CSS. Even Firebase integration, it was just one prompt and it did the Firebase integration with authentication using CSS. I was like, oh man, so nice. I don't have to do CSS anymore. But yeah, that's, I mean, yeah, I'm just speechless. I mean, for me, the agentic workflow, I think I've demonstrated this. It is definitely A2A plus ADK / MCP plus tools. I think that's where it's going. I can be very brief. AI will not replace your job. I mean, we've seen that already this morning or yesterday in the keynote, but I'm definitely convinced, but developers using AI tools will. So if you don't want to be replaced by AI, you have to add the AI tools to your, to your knowledge base. I would say thank you for your attention. I still have 4 minutes, so if you want questions, I'm here. Before you go out, I have a talk tomorrow. It's a backup talk, but I have a talk about modern Java, where I will talk about how to do inference in Java. So if you're interested in this stuff, tomorrow afternoon at 1:30, I'll go deeper in how to do inference in Java. Mario, you have a question?
Yes. Tons of questions, to be honest. One very...
The mic's not on.
Okay. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Tons of questions, to be honest, but yeah, the first one is very practical. I mean, with MCP, you at some point give lots of MCP server to the same LLM, meaning that the LLM is overwhelmed with tools,
yes.
and I'm starting experiencing lots of tool hallucination. Meaning,
yes.
Is it something that you experience it as well? And,
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So I'm using the file system MCP that I developed, but I'm also using the JetBrains one, which it does a bit more fine-grained ones. And those two together, they actually work okay. But once I start adding other tools who have like overlapping, it all of a sudden starts to, I wouldn't say hallucinate, but it's starting to use the wrong tools from the different providers. Yes, yes. So you need to really be precise and okay, don't activate everything, brute force, do it fine grains for sure, to get the best results. But that's how it is today. How it's going to be next week, literally next week, it might change, right? But yeah, you need to be careful. And it also might overload, just the LLM, for sure.
Thank you for this very good show. So my question is, with this practice, sometimes the LLM, the code generated is wrong.
Yeah.
Have an exception.
Yes.
So my question is, you have any example to retry prompt to solve the problem automatically without our
So what I did not explain in my talk is that what I do is that if I build a new feature, I create a new feature branch. That's very important. Because if you don't do the feature branch and you just continue, it all of a sudden it will break and you can't roll back. So I do it very incremental and very small features, adding once, each time in a different branch. So that way I know, one, what's been changed, but two, when I commit and push it, I can review the code and really look at the code. Because I didn't really mention that in my first slide, but I had the monkey in Matrix. About the reference to monkey is that basically we are just copying like we used to do on Stack Overflow. We're copying code from Stack Overflow without thinking and just pasting it, and yeah, it works, right? But now we're doing this on steroids, where the LLM will provide you code, you just run it, it works, and you don't even look at the code. Be very careful with that, because it will bite you back. It will start creating sometimes code which doesn't work or looks really ugly, and then you as a senior developer need to guide it and say, no. You have to do it like this, and so you need to still guide it, but that's 2025.
And if we have a style of code, our style of code, like context, can we automate it?
Yes. So in Devoxx Genie, what I've done, and a lot of them are doing this as well, I have something called Devoxx Genie MD. Let me show you in the prompts. My ID is not responding, so that's fine. But you can actually include a markdown file, and this markdown file, there you can add, for example, your code style, your certain PDFs that you want to include from a specification point of view, and that markdown file can then be added automatically in the instruction prompt. And a lot of them, like Cursor, Windsurf, they're all doing that same trick, is that you have basically markdown files that you can include in the prompt. That's the way people are doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go on.
Hello. Well, my question is a little bit related to this one. It's about the code and the project that you generate using those tools. What is the level of quality, and if, in terms of maintainability, you can assure that we control this project, and you know that the business output is exactly what you want, and you can put this in production and control it. I mean, what is your...
So the only way to control it is to make sure that your instruction, your system prompt is well defined. My system prompt is just very simple for a hello world, but if you're working on a real project, you need to have a really long system prompt defining, okay, the coding styles, certain things that they need to respect, etc. And then the LLM will do its best to actually be compliant.
And you need to use tools to review your code, or you have to do it yourself as a
personally,
senior
I
developer
still want to learn, so I review the codes that I commit. But who knows what the future will bring?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can have a talk.